Gamarjoba, good afternoon, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, experts, participants of the workshop. It is a pleasure to welcome you today to workshop 3 of the UN Public Service Forum that we're organizing today together with the Government of Georgia, Ministry of Justice. The workshop is on digital public infrastructure, digital ID, and data security for public service delivery. I would like to invite our first speaker for the opening session, Mr. Vincenzo Acquaro, who serves as a Chief of Digital Government Branch with the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Acquaro, the floor is yours. Please come.
Her Excellencies, Ms. Tamar Zodelava, Deputy Minister of Justice of Georgia, Dr. Didier Trebuch, United Nations Resident Coordinator in Georgia, distinguished representative of the Government of Georgia, dear colleague, experts and participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this workshop on digital public infrastructure, digital ID, and digital security for public service delivery, organized as part of the 2026 United Nations Public Service Forum here in Tbilisi. At the outset, allow me first to express our sincere appreciation to the Government of Georgia for hosting this important forum, and primarily to the Ministry of Justice and the LEPL Digital Governance Agency for their proactive partnership with the UNDESA in preparing this workshop. Georgia has demonstrated strong commitment to digital transformation and to modernizing public services, and we are grateful for the collaboration shown throughout this process. I also warmly acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency Deputy Minister Tamar Zodelava, whose participation reflects the importance that Georgia attached to this agenda. Thank you for joining us. We meet at a time when digital transformation is no longer a sectorial reform or a technical modernization exercise. It has become central to how government delivers services, build trust, protect rights, and respond to people and businesses. The question is how to reimagine public institutions so that services become more accessible, inclusive, transparent, and resilient. Digital public infrastructure is at the heart of this transformation. When designed well, DPI, digital public infrastructure, provides the shared digital foundation that allow governments' systems to connect, exchange data securely, and deliver services around people's needs. It can reduce fragmentation, simplify access to services, support coordination across institutions, and make government more responsive during key life events, from birth registration to health, social protection, and emerging response. Digital ID is one of the most critical components of this architecture. A secure and inclusive digital identity can enable people to access services more easily, probe eligibility, sign documents, receive benefits, and interact with public institutions without unnecessary barriers. But digital ID must be more than a credential. It must be built on trust, inclusive by design, accessible to all, and supported by strong legal, institutional, and technical safeguards. No one should be excluded because of limited connectivity or digital skills, documentation, or confidence in the system. This is why data security and data governance are not secondary issues. They are also fundamental to public value. As governments expand the digital services and increasingly rely on data-driven systems, the protection of personal data, privacy, consent, cybersecurity, and accountability must be embedded from the beginning. Trust cannot be added after systems are built. It must be part of design, governance, institutional culture, and daily operation of digital public services. In this context, the Global Digital Compact and the WSIS Plus 20 review provide an important framework, and UNDESA, through its core mandate on digital transformation, e-government, and public institutions, stand ready to support member states in translating this commitment into action. The 2024 United Nations E-Government Survey shows that many countries have made significant progress in digital development, while gaps remain in access, capacity, interoperability, and data security. These gaps matter because digital transformation that is not trusted, secure, and inclusive can deepen inequalities rather than reduce them. This workshop, therefore, comes at a timely moment. Over the next sessions, we will examine how DPI can support citizen-centric public service delivery, how digital ID and data security can strengthen trust, how interoperability can connect system, data, and people, how artificial intelligence can be used responsibly while upholding human rights, and how resilient digital ecosystem can ensure continuity and adaptability in public services. Our goal is not only to exchange experiences, but also to identify practical pathways. We need to learn from countries advancing in this field, understand risk and safeguards, and discuss how policy, technology, and institutional reform can be aligned. Digital transformation is not achieved by technology alone. It requires leadership, coordination, capacity, ethics, public engagement, and a clear commitment to leave no one behind. Let me conclude by thanking again the government of Georgia, the Ministry of Justice, the digital governance agencies, all the speakers, moderators, and all the participants here. I look forward to a rich exchange of ideas and recommendations that can help member states build a digital public infrastructure that is trusted, secure, and truly serves people. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Acquaro. I now have a pleasure and honor to invite Her Excellency Tamar Zodelava, Deputy Minister of Justice of Georgia, to deliver her opening remarks. The floor is yours.
Dear Mr. Acquaro, dear Mr. Tribouet, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to Workshop 3 of the UN Public Service Forum 2026, dedicated to digital public infrastructure, digital identity, and data security for public service delivery. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all participants for joining us here in Tbilisi and for contributing your expertise and experience to this important global dialogue. Your presence reflects our shared commitment to strengthening public institutions and improving people's lives through innovation and effective governance. The United Nations Public Service Forum has become one of the most important global platforms for advancing excellence in public administration. It does provide a valuable opportunity to exchange knowledge, share successful practice, and explore solutions to the challenges facing governments in an increasingly digital world. We all agree that digital transformation is no longer simply about introducing new technologies. It's about strengthening governance, enhancing public trust, improving service delivery, and placing citizens at the center of public administration. As our societies become more interconnected, the quality of digital public systems has become a key driver of economic development, social inclusion, and democratic resilience. Over the past years, Georgia has made significant progress in modernizing its public sector. We have expanded access to digital services, simplified administrative procedures, and strengthened transparency and accountability across government institutions. Throughout this process, we have remained guided by one fundamental principle: technology must serve people. Innovation is meaningful only when it makes public services more accessible, secure, inclusive, and responsive to citizens' needs. Today's workshop focuses on one of the most important foundations of modern governance. Digital public infrastructure, secure digital identity systems, and trusted data governance frameworks are essential tools for delivering effective public services, reaching underserved communities, and creating greater public value. At the same time, digital transformation brings significant responsibilities. As governments collect and manage increasingly volumes of data, protecting privacy, ensuring cybersecurity, and maintaining public trust must remain at the forefront of our efforts. Today's discussions will explore how governments can build integrated, citizen-centered digital ecosystems that are secure, inclusive, and resilient. Participants will examine key issues such as digital identity, interoperability, data governance, artificial intelligence in public administration, and the future of digital public services. I kindly encourage all participants to engage actively, share your experience, and contribute your perspectives. The exchange of ideas and lessons learned is essential to developing practical solutions that can strengthen public service delivery around the world. Let me once again thank all participants, speakers, moderators, facilitators, and organizers for your commitment and engagement. I wish you productive discussion and a successful workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite to the podium Mr. Didier Trebuch, UN Resident Coordinator in Georgia, to deliver his opening remarks. The floor is yours, please.
Mogasal Mebid, good afternoon, Madam Deputy Minister, Tamar Zodelava, Deputy Minister of Justice, my colleague Vincenzo Acquaro, representing UNDESA, distinguished participants. It's really my pleasure to join you in this workshop today. In my capacity of UN Resident Coordinator in Georgia, I want really to thank the Ministry of Justice, the Digital Governance Agency, and of course UNDESA for convening us, and especially on this very timely discussions in this workshop. The experience we'll hear today from different countries through panelists, including the one from Georgia, really show that, in our view, digital transformation is not an abstract policy agenda. It's really about how people better access services, how institutions also work together, how trust is built between citizens and public institutions. And it's also about rights. And the UN, we believe, is a trusted partner of government supporting this agenda. For example, in Georgia, we recently signed the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for the period until 2030 with the government. And this provides the strategic foundation for our support, as we do in all countries. For example, here it places innovation and the harnessing of digital transformation as its core, as a means to address inequalities and further reduce poverty. But we know that this will only be possible if digital transformation is steered to be inclusive, gender responsive, and is guided by the public interest. And this is where the UN can play a catalytic role in support of government leadership. The UN country teams around the world can bring together the policy expertise, the normative standards, as well as the operational capacity of the wider UN system to convince stakeholders. We can help also connect global commitments, such as the Pact for the Future, and of course, the Global Digital Compact with national priorities for practical implementation. We support countries to ensure that digital transformation is anchored in the promise of the 2030 agenda, which is to leave no one behind. And these include governance and institutional reform, the rule of law, data and statistics, gender equality, child rights, labor standard, migration, and beyond. And to that effect, we can facilitate, of course, like is illustrated in this forum during those 3 days, the sharing of best practices across countries. Across this region in particular, we are seeing how coordinated UN support is helping countries translate digital transformation into better services to people. In Albania, for example, the UN program implemented jointly by FAO, ILO, and the ITU under the resident coordinator's leadership aims to bridge the rural divide and unlock the full potential of small-scale farmers, especially women, youth, and underserved communities. Another example is the digital health program that has been launched in Kyrgyzstan with WHO, UNDP, UNFPA, and UNICEF to integrate the various digital health system and platform. And of course, in Georgia, we have a very prominent joint endeavor with WHO, UNFPA, and UNOPS to help roll out telemedicine for increased access to private healthcare in the most remote rural areas. So these are just examples, and there are many more, but they serve to highlight the importance also of data security. Because the public sector handles very highly sensitive information, such as identity documents, as you mentioned before, health records, social welfare information, and other personal data. So digital and cybersecurity are therefore needed to be built into the public service reform from the beginning and not added later to avoid, of course, a lot of inconveniences. Trust is also a public asset. We know that once it's lost, it's difficult to rebuild. And here again, the UN has a role to play at the outset in convening and working with various key stakeholders to promote trust, accountability, and international practices, again, in support of government leadership. And you must be aware of the, Vincenzo was mentioning, the 2024 UN e-government survey that shows that 72% of member states have reached a high or very high level of digital development, which is extremely encouraging. But it also means that the next challenge for all of us is no longer only to digitize services. A lot of efforts have been rolled out accordingly. It is really to make digital systems interoperable, secure, inclusive, and I would say very importantly, trusted. So the value, again, of digital public infrastructure cannot be only measured by technical sophistication, but by whether a person can access a service without discrimination, whether a person or institutions can work together responsibly, whether people can trust the systems that serve them. So this requires moving beyond fragmented digitalization efforts towards coherent ecosystem. And I think this is probably one of the bigger challenges nowadays. And finally, AI adds another layer to the discussion. As we know, AI can help governments become faster, more responsive, and better able to anticipate needs with the great foresight capacity that it offers. But it also raises questions of transparency, biases, accountability, and institutional capacity. So the challenges is not to adopt new tools, it is to govern them well, and that to make sure that they strengthen both trust and service delivery. So as the UN development system, we stand ready to work with the governments, development partners, civil society, the private sector to advance this agenda through the cooperation frameworks that we have in each and every country. And the conversation, of course, that happens during this workshop matters a lot, because together we can certainly help ensure that the future of public service is digital, but also inclusive, secure, accountable, and built on trust. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for convening this workshop, and I wish you a really productive and inspiring discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trebuk. With this, the opening remarks segment is over. I would like to make a quick couple of housekeeping rule announcements and then invite the speakers of the opening session for a quick photo op-ed here in front of the podium, if you don't mind. Just to quickly announce to the rest of the participants, we will have a very short break right now, allowing the speakers of the opening session to leave the room if they need to, after the photo session. And then right after that, we will continue with session 1 of the workshop, which will be discussing the issues of reimagining governance through digital public infrastructure. I will at that point invite the speakers of the session also to come to the podium. This is for the announcements of the housekeeping for now, and I would like to invite the speakers to the front for the photo session. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes. Now with this, thank you very much for the reminder. Keep forgetting it. Now with this little break, I would like to invite the speakers of session 1, Mr. Sandro Tsicheridze. I hope I got it right by you. To the podium, Mr. Pedro Tavares, Professor Lei Zheng, and Dr. Hasnan Bokhari to the podium. I will join you from the podium to continue with the session. Before we go to the session, and while giving myself time to approach my seat, I would like to ask our technical team to pull out questions for your audience's interactive responses. We prepared a number of questions before we go into the discussions and presentations, asking your opinion in real-time format on a number of questions. These are really easy to go. You will need to just scan the QR codes and then make your choice, and then the results will come up immediately. So once they do it, and after that, seeing where the mood of the room is, we will continue on with the speaker interventions. Thank you. So. There will be 3 questions.
One, two.
Yes, great, thank you. So as you can see, We had 3 questions for the start of the session before we go into discussions. One is first is what is the biggest challenge to moving from fragmented digitalization to coherent digital public infrastructure? And you are free to choose up to 3 options. As you can see in the live interaction format, the most challenging thing for people feel is the fragmented institutional responsibilities as such, which got us 62% of the vote, followed by insufficient technical capacity, 43%, lack of common standards, 35%, weak data governance, again 35%, with limited political commitment, 32%, and limited funding. And I think we had a slight shift in real time of the slots for the political commitment and funding and investment, and the low public trust. So interestingly, people don't feel that public is not trusting the processes. What they think is bottleneck is the fragmented institutional responsibilities at the first place with the insufficient technical capacity. On the second question, which areas should governments prioritize to make digital public infrastructure deliver greater public value? The first place is for user-centered service design. So this is something that we always pay attention to, and then apparently people still feel that is important, a lot more than it is now. Interoperable core platforms, inclusive access and digital skills, which get only 15% of the votes, followed by the strong governance and accountability. And the last question for this specific session is, what is the most important condition for DPI to support inclusive and citizen-centered services? Again, with a choice of up to 3 options, the participants felt that a strong cross-government coordination is essential. Privacy and security safeguards are also important, and our speakers in the opening sessions, including Her Excellency, just mentioned that safeguarding measures as one of the important concerns for the government too. Reliable digital identity, clear national strategy, and accessible and inclusive designs. So if we look into which took the highest scores for all 3 questions, it's fragmented institutional responsibilities, user-centered service design, and strong cross-government coordination are taking a priority in all those questions. With this background, we will now delve into the discussions for session 1, which will look specifically on the issues of reimagining the government. And we hope that that will give us guidance about how to address those issues as well, because digital public infrastructure as part of the governance becomes increasingly more and more important. With this, I'd like to offer the first speaker the floor. Mr. Sandro Scheridze. He is the chairman of the Digital Governance Agency of the Ministry of Justice of Georgia, LEPL, and he will talk about the digital public infrastructure as a foundation for Georgia's public sector modernization. Before I give the floor to you, I would like to ask the participants to keep the questions. If you have any questions that you would like to ask to the speakers, we have an interactive section right after it where we will moderate and take questions from the floor. So please take a note of it, and then at the interaction section I will give a possibility for as many of you as possible to address your questions to specific speakers or to the panel as you find fit. So the floor is yours, Mr. Sturi.
Thank you very much. Distinguished representatives of the United Nations, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be here in Tbilisi for this discussion on digital public infrastructure, digital ID, and data security, and public service delivery. The theme of this forum, innovation, accountability, participation, and inclusion, is directly connected to what we are discussing today. People often describe digital public infrastructure as a technology, platforms, digital ID, payments, data exchange, cybersecurity. These things matter, but for those of us working in public administration, the real question is simpler. how can these tools help the state serve people better? For Georgia, digital transformation is not just about moving services online. It's about building shared digital foundation that allow public institutions to work together and deliver services that are simpler, faster, more secure, and more inclusive. This is also in line with the Global Digital Compact, which calls for digital transformation, what is trusted, safe, and people-oriented. I want to focus on three key parts: digital identity, digital payment, and data exchange. The first key element is digital identity. If public services are to be truly digital, people must be able to identify themselves securely online. Without this, a service may look digital but still remain partly physical. A citizen might find information online but still need to visit an office to prove who they are. A business might start an application online but still need paper document to finish it. Secure digital identity reduces physical presence and allows people to access service remotely. This is important for everyone, but especially for the people living outside the major cities, citizens abroad, people with a limited mobility, and the businesses that need faster contact with the state. Strongly digital identity also depends on something less visible, but equally important: reliable core registries. If the underlying data about people, businesses, and the property is not secure and up-to-date, the digital identity cannot function as a trusted foundation. Getting this right is a basic requirement. But the digital identity is more than a tool. It's a trusted mechanism between citizens, the state, and the service providers. Citizens must trust that the process is secure and the personal data is protected. Public institutions must trust that person is who they claim to be. Service providers need a legal proof that the digital interaction is valid. This is why digital identity must go hand in hand with the trusted services, qualified electronic signatures, electronic seals, and timestamps. These tools make digital interaction legally valid and allow citizens, businesses, and institutions to sign and exchange documentations digitally with the full legal effect. For Georgia, developing digital identity and qualified trust services is a clear priority. We see this not only as a technical reform, but as a foundation of trust relationship between people, businesses, and the state. Since 2018, Georgia is enjoying having an e-document and e-trusted services full functioning system, and DGA is the supervisor body of the system. Let's move to the second key point, digital payments. We often say a service is digital when you can apply for it on the internet, but we need to look at the full picture. A public service is not fully digital if a citizen applies online but still has to go somewhere else to pay. For the citizens, getting a service is one single journey. It starts when they need a document and it ends when they get it. They want a smooth, easy process. If we break this journey, we will tell them that to stop, go to the bank, and bring the proof of the payment. Then the magic of the digital government is gone. This service becomes only partly digital, and today partly digital is simply not good enough. This is why integrated digital payments are essential. In Georgia, digital payments are built into our my.gov.ge, our unified public service portal. A person can access a service, identify themselves, submit a request, and complete the payment. All the same digital environment. This reduces friction, saves time, and makes services more convenient. It also supports transparency because digital payment records make process easier to track and verify. This is also shows something important. Digital government cannot be built by the public sector only. In Georgia, the National Bank and the border banking sector play an important role in making this possible. Looking ahead, open banking can further support innovation and public-private cooperation in the service delivery. When payments are well integrated, they became more than just a payment step. They became part of the complete digital service experience. It has been a long time already that Georgia having an open banking system in the place which is being developed. I'm informed that the representatives of National Bank of Georgia are attending the session and will be grateful if they contribute more about the interactive plenary discussion. The third block is a data exchange. Public institutions should not operate as an isolated digital island, and citizens should not have to act as messengers between governmental offices and agencies, carrying documents and information from one to another. Very often, the state already has the information it's asking people to provide again. If the system do not communicate and the burden falls on the citizen, this is inefficient, frankly, and unfair. Very often, the state already has these documents. Georgia data exchange infrastructure was built to connect public sectors, systems, and support secure, lawful, and efficient sharing of the data. If one institution holds the verified information and another needs the same information for the lawful purpose, the data should flow between systems, not through the citizens. This is what we call once-only principle. People should not have to give the same information to the state multiple times when it is already available and can be lawfully reused. This is not only about convenience, it's about compatibility. The state should not keep asking citizens for information it already holds. Data exchange is especially important for life events services, buying property, moving home, starting a new business, having a child. In each of the situations, several institutions need cooperated around a person's needs. Sharing data lets us build services around the citizen's life rather than our own office walls. But connecting our system is not just an IT job. We also need clear laws, shared rules, safe data, and real teamwork between government offices. Strong data governance is essential for the next stage of the Georgian digital development. DGA has been an administration of the data exchange infrastructure, Georgian governmental gateway, for more than 15 years already, and it saves millions of hours and paper annually. Let's see the big picture. Digital ID keeps our safe online digital payments, let you finish everything in one place, and sharing data means the government stops asking you for the same paper twice. Together, these three tools build a government that truly works for the people. Our portal, as I mentioned before, my.gov.ge, is what citizens actually see, but its real power comes from the behind. Underneath, safe ID, secure payments, shared data, and strong cybersecurity. It's not just a website, it's a whole living ecosystem. But remember, going digital does not mean we close our physical doors. In Georgia, we still have our famous public services halls for those who need a personal help. We want to bring services closer to everyone. No one should be left behind. That is why we are working hard to make our website fully accessible for people with disabilities. To earn people's trust, we must be safe and responsible. You cannot just add cybersecurity at the end. We have to build it into the ecosystem from the day one. Looking to the future, our goals are simple. Make our system strong enough to improve data sharing and create services that come to you before you even ask. Let me close with the thoughts. Digital public infrastructure is not about connecting computers. It's about connecting the government around the people's needs. It's not an IT project. It's a way to build trust and make people's life easier. We have had a strong foundation in Georgia for years, but we also want to do it better. Moving forward, we have 4 main steps. First, making it easier to log in and prove who are using just your mobile phone. Second, bringing the full power of digital payment directly into our public services. The third, making our data sharing network even stronger and ready to grow. And fourth, using artificial intelligence carefully and correctly. This means we will strictly follow the ethical and the legal rules set by UNESCO and the Council of the Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Skeridze. And thank you very much also for respecting the time. I wanted just to remind again that the presentation time is limited to 10 minutes, and the shorter the better for the discussions to open up. With this, I would like to give the floor now to our next speaker, Mr. Pedro Tavares, who is a Senior Digital Development Leader and Advisor from Portugal. And he will be delivering the presentation, actually talking right into what you laid out for, on the fragmented, moving from fragmented digitalization to a digital state spine. The floor is yours. Please.
Thank you, Excellency Deputy Minister, Government of Georgia, colleagues from the UN and different governments. It's a pleasure to be here. I think it's time also to congratulate. From what I understand, this is the first UN forum that has such a strong focus on digital. And as a computer engineer, I was waiting for this day for a long time, right? So that the digital gets to this stage. So a little bit about myself as an introduction to this, because it's justified on that. So I'm from Portugal, but I was away from Portugal for about 17 years. I worked in Asia Pacific for all of that time. And those 17 years, I lived in 7 countries. I've done work for over 20 countries. And most of the time, I was embedded in governments. And I felt there was some challenges that government do feel like, and that they could need help to. And I guess you will feel the same challenges today. You'll hear a lot about different things: inclusion, citizen-centric, data privacy, data sovereignty, cybersecurity, infrastructure. And you will think, my gosh, where do I start and where do I end? So on that, I thought, well, it is a good time to maybe write something that is not just a DPI, but also integrated with the services. I also realized that there was a lot of conversation about the DPI, and there was a lot of guides from the World Bank, OECD. A lot of them have guides on the digital public infrastructure, but there's not a lot of work on the service delivery itself. So DPI is a means to an end, and was starting to sound like it was an end in itself, right? The digital ID doesn't really serve for anything if you don't have the services. And I think those should be designed in parallel. You don't design a house starting with the key. You design a house and you put the keys. And so it should be the same for the digital ID. So I try to bring together in that guide, which is obviously free, and I'll ask you later to help me share it with the world and download it and reuse it and send comments and all of that. It's by no means an end in itself, but I try to bring all the recommendations and all different areas that I thought of could be a question for governments to have in mind. And so that's where we'll go. I probably have the longest title of the entire forum. A little bit of what I already said, right? So DPI without service transformation, it's like you have a whole set of pipes for water, but you don't really have the water, right? So you don't have the service being delivered to you. The opposite as well is if you have the services without the central gluing DPI, that brings them all together and makes things easier, as Sandra, you were saying, on not duplicating the data, providing all of the data. That's the result, right? So you have many islands with no bridges together, and I've worked in countries where people have to bring all the kind of birth certificates from themselves, from their parents, to prove that they are who they say they are several times, even when they already have a digital ID. So sometimes it's not just having an ID, digital or non-digital. It's also about the governance around it and the collaboration between government agencies as well to accept it too. So there's a little bit more detail on that, but I think maybe we'll not dive into that on the pros and cons of what happens in each fragmentation problem, right? So I propose some new abstract way to look at it, and I call it the digital state spine. If any vertebrate animal has only 3 vertebrae, maybe it's a little bit small. But still, I have the DPI layer, which I expanded a bit more than the digital ID, the payments, and the data sharing. I think everything that is shared across core registries should be part of it, APIs. Singapore, for example, has reusable pieces of code and packages that you can use. Those should be treated as digital public infrastructure because they will be shared across, and that means they will require the same governance as all the rest of the IDs and so on. So I expanded a bit on the idea of DPI. The digital government layer, that's ultimately the aim of it, right? Providing services to people through digital means. And so that's obviously at the core. And then obviously the governance. Safeguards is important. People need to feel safe and included, and limits, even limits of how the government can use your data, because that helps with trust as well, and that helps with the rule of law and democracy as well. So all of those are important. As was said already, we need to focus things on the citizens. We have the e-government. There's still organizations and people talking about e-government, where was the other way around. We will be digitizing government services. So that was oriented towards the government with the government point of view, and now everyone is shifting to the digital government, which should be focused on the citizen life event itself. And this was because the e-government was done by people with a background like mine on computer engineering, and now the digital is done by policymakers and people with a more social background that can understand that and are not focused on the technology. So it is a good thing. There's a couple of conditions on public value. It was in the answers. Political mandate, so who does what? A lot of countries have different solutions. Some countries set up a ministry for digital transformation, others a digital transformation office, others something under the Prime Minister's office. Some set up a steering committee. It really doesn't matter. It is, and there's guidance in the book on what to look at. The more important thing is something that facilitates the collaboration, establishes a clear mandate. But I'll also add, in the end of the day, Murphy's golden rule is who has the gold makes the rule. So which means who's funded well really has the power to implement. So funding is important, and not always governments put their money where their mouth, where the whatever. So often they recognize that it's important to have digital plays a role and is important, but when it's time for budget, and also sometimes it comes from the citizens because digital is not so tangible and visible, not always is funded as much as governments say they are. So that helps to establish a political mandate, clear institutional ownership, who owns what data, who is responsible for what parts of the service, and also who is not. Cybersecurity helps to build trust, helps to continue the state sovereignty as well, and risks of political turmoil with other countries as well, not just internal. Meaningful connectivity is the thing that we'll hear a lot about it. So people might have connectivity. It includes having connectivity, being able to afford it, but also includes having digital literacy, but also digital skills. So someone that not just uses content, but collaborates, participates, and has the ability to extract extra value from having access to connectivity and to digital services. Public sector capacity was also mentioned, and it's also important to have partner and procurement alignment. So I work with several different government partners, and sometimes everyone pushes through their own direction. And I also propose in the guide ways for the government to control the ownership, and they're being the ones driving instead of being driven by the donors and development partners on their priorities. So how to fit government partners' priorities with their own priorities as well. There's a few paths in the book and guides and roadmaps. This is, I would think, the most important summary of it. Define the outcomes, assess where you are, start with key services, set governance and accountability, fix legal blockages and limitations, design shared building blocks, re-engineering your services. So we're not talking about digital services, but digital is also a good opportunity to streamline the government processes and to simplify, remove steps, make them more efficient, saving time, saving money, saving costs, and focusing more on other things with those savings. And then align your partners. It is important as well. Make sure that what they contribute comes from the plan that you have and not you're being dragged around with different directions, with different plans. And then obviously monitor, measure. You can't change anything if you're not measuring. So a little bit of a conclusion, even there's more slides, a conclusion of what I said. DPI is not the goal. It is a means to an end. It's almost like roads, and that's why it's called digital infrastructure, but public. So it is like the public infrastructure of roads and so on. It's something that you build on top of. And governments do need it, but they need to be connected to real services. IDs need to be connected to real services and all the part of the DPI. This is all the things you can find in my book, in my guide. And there's the third is coming soon. I wanted to do a short, easy to read book. Ended up being a little bit longer than I thought, so I'm working on something more playbook-like kind of thing. I think we're running out of time. So if you wish to download, there'll be the QR codes there also to distribute. There's on the left is the link to download it, and on the right, if you can please reshare the post that I have on LinkedIn to make it reach more people. So that's the reason I wrote the book for. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pedro. And I think you laid out also the foundations for our next speaker, but also practitioner in many ways, Professor Lei Zheng, who is Associate Professor at Fudan University in China, to share the experiences of Shanghai's digital public infrastructure in online service delivery. And Professor Zheng has been in digital journey for over 20 years, I believe, right? If not more. Both at local level, at national level, at federal level, and also oversaw the journey of digital transformation in Shanghai from the early days of conception to what is it now. The floor is yours, Professor Zheng, to share your insight.
So good afternoon, and I'm from Shanghai, China. I'm a professor at Fudan University. So I'd like to share the experiences and lessons from Shanghai from a scholar's perspective. The title of my presentation is called Digital Public Infrastructure from Integrated Online and Offline Government Services in Shanghai and China. So first, in terms of digital identities, each Shanghai citizen will have a QR code, which is linked to their citizen ID. So when they show up this code, the residents of Shanghai can process services at government services halls without need to bring a physical ID card. They can also use this QR code to take buses and to take metro trains to visit public museums and libraries. Also receive medical treatment in hospital and check into a hotel with this QR code. So that's actually a digital identity public infrastructure. And so this unified digital identity system and inclusive government services QR code actually laid a foundation for efficient and paperless digital public service for all citizens in Shanghai. And then each citizen can also download a mobile app. We call it Suisenban, which is a pocket service in Shanghai. So you can just use it on a mobile device. And on this device, citizens can access to various electronic certificates and inquire about relevant data and process a full range of government services via this all-in-one mobile government service app called Suisenban. For example, I can get access to all types of electronic certificates of mine, like my citizen ID, my driver's license, and my passport. So if I'm stopped by a policeman, I can just show him my electronic driver's license from this mobile services, even if I didn't bring my physical card. Because I only have one physical card, but in my family I have two cards. Sometimes I drive this one, but I don't have I forgot to move the physical card from this card to another card, so I can just show this electric driver's license. But I couldn't show a screenshot of the driver's license, because the policeman may think that it's not the real one. So I need to turn on this driver license electronically from this mobile services and show the process to the policeman. Then he believe that I do have a driver license. And I can also like check my social security card, because I'm a professor, so I can also check my teacher's qualification certificate on this mobile service app. Then I can also inquire about personal data. For example, I can check my pension, and because each month I will have some pension deducted from my salary, so I can see what's the total number. I can also check my housing fund. I can also check my medical insurance fund, all on real time. And each month they will be updated. And then I can also process a full range of government services on this. When, for example, if I buy a house, apply for passport, I buy a car, things like, or I open a business, open a restaurant, I can also apply for those services on this mobile app. And so in this way, we try to, in Shanghai, the government tried to establish a efficient citizen center online services, and moving from government perspective to citizen perspective, and moving from internal task-driven business to user needs-driven business, and also from agency-based data flow to cross-boundary data sharing, and from fragmented digitalization efforts to coherent digital ecosystems. And in order to achieve that, for each citizen to check their passport or ID card, or check all those data, personal data, we need to have a foundation, we call that cross-departmental data governance and sharing. So to realize all above mentioned functions, effective data governance and cross-boundary data sharing are essential, and to break down the data silos and act as the core data infrastructure for the whole city and for citizens. And in order to facilitate those cross-boundary information sharing, and Shanghai actually established a municipal level big data center. Each department or agency used to have their own information or data center, but 3 years ago, they are no longer to have their own information center. The whole city, municipal level, have a government-wide data center. They work for those agencies to develop, to collect the data, to develop apps for them. But those agencies themselves no longer have their own information system center. With this municipal big data center, and the government try to provide institutional guarantee for the city's overall planning, operation, and standardized management of digital public infrastructure. And in order to help those elderly people or citizens who are not good at using those mobile services, actually Shanghai also set up this integrated online and offline public service infrastructure. And it includes online services through portals, through mobile apps, but also the city has more than 200 service centers to serve those people who want to visit a government agency or a desk or a counter to see a real staff and have their tasks done. And they can also call a call center, and they can also visit some self-service machines. So I will show you the picture. So in this way, the government tries to bridge the digital divide and ensures inclusive government services for all groups. This is the one-stop government portal on PC desktop. But also you can, just like I mentioned, you can visit this one-stop mobile app. And you can also visit those 200 government service centers to visit those counter and to see a real person. And in those service centers, after the office hour, like after 5 p.m. when you finally can leave your office, actually those government services halls, they also close the door at 5 p.m. And then you can still visit those service center, and you can, there is one area open to citizens. You can use those self-service machine. And you can also call a call center. The number is called 12345. It's like a 311 in New York City. It's a non-emergency government service call. And then even with the mobile apps, the government also developed a age-friendly interface to make those character letters bigger so that elderly people can also recognize and can handle it. And also put services only related to senior citizens on this senior citizen interface. Services who are not related to them will not show up. So make it simple and easy to handle for senior citizens. So in order to achieve this digital public infrastructure, it's very important to have certain institutional arrangement and policy framework. So there's in order to deliver more inclusive, efficient, and citizen-centric public services, it requires a full suite of institutional arrangement and policy framework to underpin its operation. So at institutional arrangement, national level, municipal level, and district level all set up certain ministry or department to in charge of data governance, in charge of online services. For example, at the state council level, there is an administrative office who is responsible for digital government issues, and also have a national data bureau or national data administration who is responsible for data sharing, data open, data governance. At Shanghai municipal level, we also have a similar arrangement, and they are report to the mayor of Shanghai, but they are also report to the national data administration to make sure the whole nation have efficient and connected infrastructure. In terms of policy framework, the national level, China actually enacted a data security law, personal information protection law, government data sharing regulation. And at the municipal level, we also have Shanghai data regulation to regulate data sharing, data governance, data open, and data quality control, those stuff. Okay, so that's the digital government framework for Shanghai. So some of them are like application level, build different apps for economic operations, social affairs, livelihood, security, urban development. But at the bottom level, that's the infrastructure in terms of data, governance, unify the ID, and also this online, offline service system to support all different kinds of citizen groups, make sure that they can access to government services through different channels, either online or offline. Okay, actually this case is actually collected by 2022 UN eGov survey. It's called the Data-Centric Online-Offline Integration of Digital Government in Shanghai. And we do have challenges. There is a tension between efficiency and security. We try to make it efficient for citizens, but also need to protect their privacy and national security. So there was always a balance between efficiency, security, a balance between convenience and privacy, and a balance between unification and autonomy. For example, at the national level, they try to ensure that every province and different cities use the same system. But from Shanghai's local government perspective, we want to have some personalized services that meets the unique, specific needs of Shanghai citizens. So how to balance unification and autonomy is also a challenge for the whole nation to build this digital public infrastructure. Okay, also another challenge is the public interests and private profits. In order to build up such a system and build up those apps, we need to invite business to work with government, like Alibaba, Alipay, and WeChat. But when they work together with governments, those big companies, they have their own agenda, they have their own priority. So how to balance public interests and private profits is also a challenge in PPP. Okay, so that's my slides, and thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Zheng, for a very interesting presentation. And I'm sure the last slide is the one that probably most people in the room are grappling with, how to strike the right balance between all the conflicting sides or tensions, basically, that you're saying. And our next speaker, Professor Hasnain Bukhari, who is the head of the Digital Policy and AI at Willy Brandt School of Public Policy in Germany, is asking a number of questions that fit into Professor Roger's concerns on the privacy, on the accountability, and then on the digital public infrastructure through the lenses of what the AI brings with the algorithmic basically issues there. So the floor is yours. And once again, I would like to remind you that you can have the questions right after this presentation to the panelists, to any one of them, and we will have a discussion. So be active, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Madam Deputy Minister and the UNDESA team, thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure. And also in this beautiful country. It's my first time in Georgia, and I'm loving it. One question before I start from the House, and you have to raise your hand very briefly. If you have used electronic service, either on your mobile phone or via your website, with which you were able to access that service and successfully get that. For example, you applied for a passport and you received it at your doorstep, or you applied for a driver's license and you received it at your doorstep. If you did that via app or via website, please raise your hand. Right, that's about 10% in the House. So that pretty much tells you about what UNDESA has been trying to advocate for past 25 years. Access, digitalization, harmony among the ministries, and the data sets. And that's what my talk is going to be about. My input is about, and I think I have to appreciate the organizers about one important thing, because they called this title, they called the session as Reimagining Governance. Mind you, it's not reimagining government, because reimagining government would mean how the state is organized. Reimagining governance would mean that who holds the power when decisions are being made which affect citizens, and then who you would hold accountable. And I think that's the beauty of this title, Reimagining Governance, the way it is advertised in the program. And when the Global Digital Compact adopted in 2024 and the plan for Pact for the Future both recognize digital public infrastructure as a foundation for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and improving the public service delivery. And mind you, when I say improving public service delivery, I personally come from a research area where I have looked since 2002 to date into modernizing, digitalization of public services. And I was somebody who was geek enough to follow from 2002 the UN survey reports. And they are pretty good, by the way. You should, if you haven't looked at them, you should. And the question for me was very important, that how DPI can support more inclusive, more efficient, and citizen-centered services. So what I was interested in, that we have spent considerable energy over the past decade to talk about how we can build the case for DPI and getting governments involved in it. And that work is now, we can see, is bearing a fruit, at least 10% in the House. But as the deployment scales, a harder question is surfacing. And that question is more important, that not what we build, but who governs what it does. Now, when we look at the story of DPI, I think, and the public services, I think the story is a bit important because it is about the sovereignty gap. The connection between the digital public infrastructure and data sovereignty is direct, but often missed in our policy conversations, I must say. Digital public services, whether a citizen is accessing a benefit, registering a business, or applying for a passport, it all depends on the DPI stack. Now, that stack runs on the citizen data. The question of who controls that data is therefore very inseparable, you know. It's very inseparable from the question of whether the service actually works for the citizen or not. And that's important because when we talk about data sovereignty in that particular context, we are not talking about the geopolitics only or national pride. We are talking about whether a government can guarantee that the services it provides to its citizens are operating according to the public interest. And I think the European Union, to a larger extent, provides a very good example because, and I'm not saying that European Union is one of the best blueprint that you can get, but I think the connection that you can see between the DPI and data sovereignty in that particular session, in this particular context, that they offer something that I believe no other framework has tried to, over the period of time, do that. Because you look at GDPR in 2018, and it tried to answer who owns personal data. With the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, it tried to answer who is responsible for the platform. With the EU, the new EU AI Act, they're asking who oversees the automated decisions. And that impacts the DPI as well. And now in 2026, I suppose by end of 2026, we are going to have new digital identities in European Union. So I do not see that somehow as 4 laws. It is one question answered 4 times, you know, and in that particular right order. So moving on to citizen-centric services, I think we have a problem with explainability. Because the 3 questions that this session is built around, you know, they all point towards one important aspect, and that's citizen-centered delivery as a goal, and DPI is the means. But there is a condition that is rarely attached to the goal, and that's explainability. The explainability says that a service that processes a citizen's data applies an algorithm that they cannot see and delivers a decision that they cannot challenge, and that is hence not citizen-centered. It is rather citizen-facing. So those are different things. And as DPI is increasingly connected to AI-driven decisions, for social protection eligibility, for permit approvals, the explainability gap is going to then grow. So the Global Digital Compact commits to inclusive and accountable digital systems, and explainability is what that commitment means, that at the service counter, a citizen should be able to ask a simple question and receive a straight answer, and that's the test. When we look at some examples, we have a very famous, or rather infamous, example from the United Kingdom when it happened, the entire fiasco of National Health Services. They introduced a common, assumption is that in the sovereignty conversations, that domestic ownership solves the accountability problem. When we look at this example of National Health Services, it's the clearest example, the evidence that it wasn't, it does not. The program was not captured, was not designed by the foreign vendor. It was built with public money by domestic contractors under government directions, yet it failed. So the question and the thought that I'm leaving you with is that a locally built black box is still a black box. And I think that's the major takeaway for those leaders who design citizen-centric services with AI-powered decision-making on the DPI stack. We have international partnerships, and they are important. And I want to be clear that this is not that international cooperation or donor financing is not important. In fact, it is very important. And for a large number of countries, particularly in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, it is meaningful that DPI is not reachable without these external partnerships and these technical assistance or financing. But that cooperation should continue and deepen because it carries a structural risk, and that is rarely named openly. When a donor-funded digital government project deploys a foreign vendor system for benefit delivery or identity verification, the vendor's decision logic becomes embedded in the public services. So replacing it later requires renegotiating contracts, and rebuilding systems and retraining the staff. And this is something earlier we also heard that is the case. And the cost is that it is almost always higher than building with sovereignty conditions from the beginning. So development partners or bilateral donors, multilateral development banks, and of course the UN agencies are in a very unique position to make the data sovereignty and algorithmic transparency standard preconditions for digital government financing. And that's a policy choice that can be made now, I believe, without waiting for another global framework. And one important thought that I'd like to leave you with is auditing the digital government, because one of the reasons progress on algorithmic accountability has been rather slow is the assumption that it requires new regulatory architecture, a dedicated AI oversight body, a new legislation, or new technical capacity. In many cases, that is, I am afraid, not true. Supreme audit institutions already have the mandate, and we heard that in plenary session number 2, So I believe that these are standard audit questions that we can ask, and there are questions that we can actually make a list which perhaps say that who procured the system, and on what terms, who approved it, and what happens when it produces an error, and how does that affect the citizen. So one important aspect is to start with that kind of an inventory, because when we ask about new framework, and that comes before the law, I think one sort of an inventory solution might be possible, because most governments do not hold, unfortunately, a complete picture of the automated system operating in their public services. And a simple inventory can change that, because which systems are in use, who the vendor is, what decisions are being made, and it does not require, rather, new legislation from the beginning. It's the foundation on which sovereignty and accountability can be built. So if your government does not have it, that is where to start with. And the last thought that I'd like to leave you with, that these are not the 6 recommendations. These are rather distinctions. The Global Compact, and the Pact for Future and the Universal DPI Safeguard frameworks all contain the right, commitments. And So one last point is that when we talk about data sovereignty, data residency is not data sovereignty. Citizen-facing services are not the same as citizen-centered services. Domestic systems are not automatically accountable systems, and reducing foreign vendor risk is not the same as building domestic oversight. Algorithmic accountability does not require new institutions, but rather you can work on your inventory, and the inventory is available to every government without a framework. And these are the thoughts and distinctions I'll leave you with. Thanks very much.
Dear Hasnain, thank you very much for your interventions as well. This would be the final presentation for this session, and we will now open the floor for questions and interactive discussions with the speakers. One of the speakers had to leave for other engagements, and he apologized, Sandro, but the rest of us are here to address your questions. And I wanted just to remind you that we're trying today to reimagine in some ways how the governance work in the digitalized world, and then with the digital public infrastructure now becoming a cornerstone in all countries and foundation for every services that we're receiving digitally. Reimagining is an important process to go on. Many of you have already practical experiences, as has been shown during the presentation, and Professor Lei laid out the journey that Shanghai undertook. Pedro has mentioned, probably from his experience, that most countries go through in terms of the challenges of building islands without the bridges and then trying to imagine what the bridge would look like. And Hasnain has mentioned about the pitfalls in the world of AI, where algorithmic sovereignty issues and the way you control the data and build services around it becomes increasingly more important, and so far not very well regulated, I believe. With this, I would like to open the floors if there are any questions. Oh, yes, we see, please. Elsa. And let me get you the...
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Elsa Esteves from Argentina. Thank you for the speakers because very interesting talks. I would like to have two reflections, and I would like for you to comment on this. First of all, if we are talking about citizen-centric services, if we are talking about reinventing governance through DPI, we conceive and we see many examples of these core components of the DPI, like digital identity, like payments, like interoperability, but we are not thinking about one-stop service for citizen complaints, petitions, suggestions, and needs. So we are not listening to citizens. And we do have all the tools now to analyze text, information, pictures, whatever, in order to facilitate this input for citizens. So what would be the challenge to include this service as a core service of the digital public infrastructure? Second, we are talking about inclusiveness. And I recall we were talking together today with Boyega, Professor Ojo, that when we started talking about the government, we consider digital channels as a complementary to traditional channels. So far, what we see is that we are moving to digital channels, excluding traditional channels. And because we have elderly people and people now live longer, we are excluding elderly people. So I really look with happy eyes the experience from Shanghai, providing these data centers, facilitating access from face-to-face interactions. So what do you think about this, trying to refocus and thinking not to exclude those people who are not able to have digital channels and to come back to this idea that it was at the origin to facilitate inclusiveness for all these people? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. Do you want Professor Lei to? Yeah, Zheng. Professor Zheng, please.
Thank you, Elsa. Yeah. For the first question, yes, I actually mentioned this call center called 12345. It's not only a center to ask questions, it's also a center to complain. If you have any problem, you can complain. And actually, that becomes the most effective complaint channel for citizens in Shanghai. Because according to the mayor's, the city's regulation, for each complaint, government, a specific agency or staff must respond in 24 hours. So in 24 hours, give the first response. Say that we've received a complaint and ask more questions. In 15 days, they must give a feedback answer, the final results for that answer. And 12345 in Shanghai is called a customer service center for online services. So in order to make sure that they can get, we can listen to them. And second, yes, it's very important because Shanghai is an aging city. 30% of citizens are aged more than 60 years old. So government need to make sure that those 30% of citizens of the Shanghai can also get access to services. And that's why they set up this 200 service center. You may notice that we have only one PC portal, one mobile service, but have 200 service center. Why not put them into only one center? It's because Shanghai is a big city. So if we have one city, some citizens have to travel far, especially senior citizens. So still make it very difficult to access to services. So with 200 service centers, to make sure that each citizen can just walk 15 minutes to get access to a service center to get offline service and to make sure that digital inclusion will be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yep. Oh, we have two questions, one from the back and then in the first and then three. And I think that would be it for the session, just because you probably would also need some coffee break before the next session. Please, if you can keep the questions short.
Yep, so Derek from Canada. Canada, we have a big challenge with DPI because we're a federation. And so I'm kind of curious how you've wrestled with I mean, Germany's highly decentralized in the government. Shanghai sits within a larger country. How do you manage the governance across multiple jurisdictions that might not necessarily like each other?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yes, that's a really a big challenge for government. Sometimes central government is something that local government are not happy with, because some places are more advanced, like Shanghai, Beijing. Some places are a little bit backward. So when the central government try to set up a unified system for all for all province and cities, and cities like Shanghai, more advanced cities, are not happy. They will say that our local system is more advanced than the centralized system. Why we need to move back? And then the backward provinces in Western country, Western part of the country, will say that the central system is too advanced for us. We are not that, we don't need that high, sophisticated system. So after several years, right now the system is like that. Each province can have their own mobile services, apps. They develop apps by themselves. Like Shanghai have distribution ban, and Beijing have Jingtong. They have different system. But they should, at the infrastructure level, they should be abide by the same standards. So make sure that they can still be connected to each other. So when the national government needs to make a decision, and the data from Shanghai and Beijing from different provinces, they are still connected with same standard. But in order to providing services to local citizens, and that's local government's task, they can develop their own apps, systems, and solutions to balance centralization and decentralization.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. Yes, there's one here, Adebogega, in front of you, and then this.
So thanks very much for the very enlightening talk. My question is on the first part of the title for the session, which is Reimagining Governance through DPI. I'm wondering if you can provide us some sense of the visions of these new models of governance or imaginaries, of this governance that we're talking about that we will like to, reinvent, through, DPI. So I think that part is a bit missing, but it's good to see how you think about, these new models or new imaginaries of governance. All right?
Thank you. If I may request also to take the last question, probably the speakers could address both. We have another lady here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Please introduce yourself too.
My name is Nenna from the internet. I'm happy to be here because I work in data every day, and most recently in health data. And that's why I want to begin with our colleague from China. Derek has taken part of my question, that is the different levels of interoperability. But then there's another level, thematics, different pillars. When we are talking about DPI, I'm specific about health data, because this is data that people think it's within the health system. But then when you have a national data governance ecosystem, then there's a clash between the technical interoperability and what we call the political interoperability. And so we've been speaking with people who deal with data in the health system, and the summary is, I am told I'm responsible, but I'm not in charge. So this is a guy, everyone says he's the data guy, but then his authorization has to come from somewhere else. And that will end my question with the regulation within the government itself. 2 weeks ago, I was with the Africa data regulators, and most of them are with the technical and the digital economy, and not more centralized. And people are like, we know who you are, deal with technology, don't touch health. And others are saying, no, deal with health, don't touch finance. How does the political we know how data interoperability works, technically. It is the political interoperability that we know nothing about. How can someone be responsible and not be in charge? Thank you.
Both are very good questions. And I would like to remind the panelists that we have basically two sets of questions. The questions. One was about your vision of what governance would look like, based on the information that you know, based on the technology developments, etc. And then one from the field, a very practical question on the digital public infrastructure interoperability, when we know the technical solutions, but it's very difficult to understand who's in charge of decision making. So any insights from your experiences, guys?
I can actually just quickly add to what Professor Ojo has mentioned. When we talk about reimagining governance, it is about who holds the power about the decisions that affect citizens. It is not about how the state apparatus works and how it is constructed. And when this new reimaginations and this new reinvention of the governance and not government, we need to look at things a bit differently. If you look at, just to give you an example, United Nations, the DESA reports from 2008 to 2018, you see this pattern, and it's a beautiful pattern that how different governments have tried to depict or tried to get into digitalization and adopt what. And you will see most of the services that were depicted were coming from a financial aspect. So the aspect of digital identities has taken a long time, and of course it depended a lot as well. To give you second example, there was in 2021, German Interior Minister announced that every new law that has to be passed post-May 2021 in Germany has to be digital by default. This kind of a approach and a political will tells you that the government is now ready to approach things differently, and they are not retrofitting things on top by just implementing things first. And of course, this also connects to Elsa's point that how we have forgotten the vulnerable groups as well in this reimagining the governance aspect, because there are people who have lost their thumb impressions and their biometrics are not working. There are people with reduced vision and their cornea is not detected. They are excluded. So, and then we talk about citizen-centered services. So in this reimagination, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes left for the coffee break, so that's why I would like to ask the next kind of panelists to be quick to give people a little bit of time for coffee break, please.
Okay. So the question, I'll start with the question of I'm responsible, but I'm not in charge. I think that's the problem in everything, in all human activity. I think if one of us is able to solve that question, we'll be probably colonizing another galaxy in 100 years, because we will be moving so well. That is really, and I think it has to do exactly with the capacity of state, right? Anyone that has studied project management, there's a thing called RACI matrix: responsible, accountable, communicated, informed. And sometimes that is not clear, and it's not the public service only, is all across. When things become too big and the dimension and complexity increases, and so that lack of clarity is gone. And then it links with the governance, because when that happens, there's better governance, having who owns what service, what data, who's responsible for what, not just within the government, with citizens, with the private sector, what is the expectations of all of that. And if digital will improve governance or will not improve governance, I think it really depends, like in everything else, as how is it played. It doesn't matter what kind of government is investing in digital. It's how it is used, like with any other tool. You can use arrows for hunting, or you can use arrows for hunting other people too, right? So with digital is the same. It's certainly an opportunity to do better, and I think ultimately if we progress in the right direction, there will be a difference between government and governance. Government will be focused on providing good governance, and governance will be what governments will do. Hopefully that's the direction that we're going. Thanks.
So can I answer the second question very quickly? So I believe that I totally agree. So on one side, we should set up a new digital infrastructure. But on the other hand, we should also set up a new role and responsibility system. And who built up the system may not be the same person who's responsible for it. Some people should be responsible for the result of the system or the technology, not just people who are fixing it or building it up. So the new role and responsibility system is very important.
Thank you very much. I think with this we'll close the session, and after 15 minutes of coffee break, that would be at 4:30. So we extended a little bit the coffee break. Please come back for the second session, which will look into the aspects of digital trust